There can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Oh, hey.
What's up?
What's up? What are we talking about today?
Well, I brought something to the table.
You did.
And you said you were going to frame it for the podcast.
You had said, when do you know when you have, I believe was the word aged out of something, a hobby, a collection, a hobby.
Do you age out, or does the product
age you out?
Correct.
And the example that I wanted to give was radio.
Okay.
There was a time when we listened to new music, the newest band, the newest thing. I don't know when it was, but eventually, and I want to say it was in the mid-2000s, I stopped listening to new music. And only new music meaning a band I loved. I'd listen to their music,
right?
But I didn't go out and discover new music, right? I wasn't actively looking out there. Back during, the early 2000s, you had radio, you had Kazaa, LimeWire, Napster, stuff like that, and you were still looking at, and people were giving you other bands to download. You're like, oh yeah, okay, and you're listening to all that music. But it was shortly after that, in the later 2000s, when I found myself not actively looking for anything new. It used to be you'd always like, hey, what's another band? What's the new band? What's the new band I like? You were actively pursuing other bands and stuff and music. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is the era. This is the music. That's it. And your parents were the same way in a way. They liked a certain decade mainly, and that's where they stuck.
Yeah.
That's where they stuck. 60s, 70s, Dad graduated out. Doesn't sing much. Unless it's his favorite singer or band, Dad would follow those albums. Like he loved James Taylor. James Taylor's been singing for 5 decades now.
Right.
And so he'll listen to that, and that's new music to him, but still an old artist.
I was thinking more along the lines of, there's two different things. And one is, the Star Wars thing that you've talked about and what a lot of your podcasts have been built on.
Right, whole YouTube channel.
So what my thing with that is there's, I watch a lot of YouTube because now it's just my go-to for figuring out whatever I want to watch, whatever,
history, what if,
bizarre things I want to look up.
Exactly.
I have a different search history for really bizarre stuff, but for YouTube, and I reference Star Wars because there's something called Heroes Fan Productions on there, and they do all of these like short videos, and they're chopped up with Star Wars, but it tells different small stories like, about Obi-Wan or, Anakin or whatever, but it's really creatively done, and it it touches all the emotional things that Star Wars touched for a lot of our generation. And the reason I bring it up is, Disney or whoever owns these big IPs always has the ability to do something with that stuff, but there's just never seems to be any want to revisit those older properties. And I know that you've covered that in depth about the EU. I'm just saying it from that point of view. And then the other thing I've been watching a lot of is the old sports centers that we've talked about, especially when we worked in the card and comic shop together. But ESPN is a pretty good example. There was a hard shift in the early 2000s where ESPN became kind of C-SPAN, where nothing but debate-based program versus creative, funny sports and ball games.
Commentary and news were the thing. And what you're talking about, SportsCenter was at its best. Keith Overman, Dan Patrick. I mean, it's Batman and Robin. It's Laurel and Hardy.
Right.
It's whatever great duo you can think of. That is one of the greatest duos of sports commentary. Those two. And you showed me one of the sports centers, and I got hooked. I told you I watched a few other ones.
Right.
And you've been watching a lot more than I have.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and we were talking about this a few weeks ago, that you watch SportsCenter in its entirety, and it was on stuff that you didn't care about. Like maybe they were giving hockey. I don't care about hockey, but you know what? I'm watching it because my favorite commentators are talking
racing,
about It didn't matter.
Whatever.
Yeah, I didn't really follow the NFL that much, but I followed them. I didn't really care about the NBA that much, but I followed when it was NBA season. Not I cared about baseball, of course, so I love that. But I would
Right.
sit there and watch it year round. Even if my favorite sport wasn't playing that year, I was still watching. And the commentary is really witty. It's off the cuff. A lot of times it's super funny, super different. They kept it fresh, kept it entertaining. The debate, I remember the first time I saw the debate thing, it was that, I don't know, remember that time show where they had time to talk about each topic, and when time ran out, they had to go to different
It was
topics?
PTI, pardon the
Yeah.
interruption.
That was
I
the
think
first
that
time
was
I
the
remember
one.
them doing something like that and thinking, oh, this is interesting. And I guess because it had high ratings at first, everyone thought it was interesting new. They made it's like you made one reality show, and now MTV is now all reality shows.
Yeah.
And they're not music anymore. And that's exactly what happened to ESPN. They made one PTI. People thought that was novel.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And then they kept making a billion, cross commentary, argument, battle, debates, like you said. And then it became just boring. And then they got the people from ESPN Radio to do the show, but it was the same show they were doing on ESPN Radio. And the thing is, sometimes they'd show it live, but a lot of times they showed the repeat. If you didn't get to listen to it live that morning, here it was later on in the morning. I didn't understand that, but the Cowherd, Mike and Mike,
Yeah.
Colin Cowherd, all those people were getting their own shows, but they were already on ESPN Radio, so what was the difference? What was the point?
Yeah.
And I felt it got really watered down after. I listened to Dan Patrick's sports show when he went off on his own for a little while.
Yeah.
I watched that, listened to it for a little bit, and then eventually just pawned off because even Dan Patrick, which, to be honest, just last night I watched a clip from Dan Patrick's show earlier this week,
Yeah.
talking about Pete Rose and everything. Which
I watched that too.
Oh, you did?
I'm watching the documentary right now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to watch the documentary probably when it's done. But I did want to hear his thoughts on the documentary so far, just kind of how it's so weird that we both saw this, but just how I liked watching the documentary of Who Killed the WCW, and then watching
Cornette.
Jim Cornette, give his thoughts after every episode. But I didn't watch it back to back to back. I watched all the show actually, then watched the commentary.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm interested in what he has to say on certain topics. Not everything I would listen to. But yeah, that was the time. I know the time ESPN for me lost me. And it was in those
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Yeah.
Where the radio people started coming on doing their own shows. Like, well, why? They're on radio. If I want to listen to them, I'll listen to radio. Why do I want to watch repeats?
Yeah, I know that there's a business.
Feinbaum was getting
I
his
mean,
own
I
show,
know
yeah.
that everything is based off,
It's based
P&Ls
off the
of
numbers
things.
that-
But there's some weird creativity where someone comes in. It's either they get bought by somebody, and ESPN is owned by Disney. So I don't know if that has anything to do with this either. But there's this shift where we have a new way of doing things, and it will only be different versions of the same thing.
Yeah.
And it just really disengages you from the products at that point.
I agree. Same thing about hobbies too. To be honest, how I got into board games, I need to thank Star Wars, because when they stopped printing the EU, I had more time to dive into board games, and so gave up reading. I said, well, it's a good stopping place. If they're going to hit the big reset button on all this is a great place to get off the train.
Yeah.
And that's why another reason it's been so easy to get away from Star Wars and not look at the new. I enjoy the old. I can still talk about the old, like I can talk about my favorite video games. But shoot, my
Right.
favorite video games ended with the Xbox 360.
Right.
And so even video games, and video games were different. My Xbox broke, and that's kind of what led me into board games at first. But I was very light. I had maybe 2 or 3 board games that we would just filter through and play. And then when the expanded universe stopped, I went, welp.
Well, do you think it's just about becoming a cantankerous old man, or do you think that there's more to it than that?
It could be, and here's the thing. I know we're old. I know that. I'm not denying that at all. I feel at the same way though. And this is what I guess people feel like when you call it a midlife crisis. Like, wait a minute. It's so weird you're saying this, because I thought about this a few nights ago.
I'll be walking up or down these stairs. I think about it every time I come over here.
But we're past the half point. We're past the half point.
What is
in
the
life.
half point? 80?
I don't, if we can make it to 80, hopefully.
Well, I'm
You know,
wondering where
but-
the half point of life do you feel like it is?
I don't know. I'm assuming it would be 40 would have been the half point.
Okay.
So I'm assuming we're past the half point. Yes, it's possible to live past 80. Of course, a lot of people do, but you know, 70s,
Well, I didn't know if that was kind of your goal. I mean, you know, you have a whole mess of
I mean,
kids and stuff, and you've got
yeah,
things.
stay
that you're
alive
like-
for as long as I can, of course. But the thing is, though, it's half done. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I still had some things I want to do back when I was younger, back when I could do these things, and now I can't. And I can see where they say it called midlife crisis, where they try to get this is where they get the nice car. This is where they get the hair plants or the Botox or, you know, something like that.
Sure.
To keep that fresh look, to get that fresh look back, to get that fresh feeling again. No, I'm not old. I'm not crusty. I'm not in the new. But at the same time, I'm happy in my place. I'm happy where I am. I am, you know, but I've been saying these kids today for like 10 years now.
Sure.
So, you know, kids today. I realize I'm not one of the kids.
Well, I guess the thing, you know, and the thing that I'll say is we've talked a lot about wrestling, and now with wrestling, like WWE is over the past couple of years has enjoyed a lot of new success. Like they are really
Yeah.
not just, and this is not a TV revenue situation, but I mean, they're live events. Granted, they run less, but they're selling buildings out. They're doing stadiums. They're doing a lot of things and generating a lot of revenue. So I feel like that took so long from the 90s has hit itself one more time. And it took almost 30 years to get to that point, if not more, really, if you look at it that way. I just wonder if, you know, Star Wars being the thing, you know, where we know that you're not going to have movies anytime soon, is that just a result of poor creative, or have they tried to set a new generation up and a new generation just will not buy that old idea anymore?
I think it's running its course. Some things can last forever in a way. In a way, I would say Alvin and the Chipmunks started in the 50s. Still relevant today, not as big, but they've had their moments of pop. The Turtles have still been big. I think they still are big since the 80s. You're looking at
Right.
legacy
Yeah, that's
IPs. Not everything, you know, will stay the same. I agree. I think eventually these things have to die off because, I mean, unless you're Wizard of Oz or whatnot. But you think about, and I watch a channel and he reviews and talks about great movies from the 70s. My movie knowledge goes to the mid to early 80s, maybe, you know,
Right.
of movies that came out back in the day. In the 70s, tons of movies came out. I can name you the blockbusters,
Right.
Jaws, Alien, a few things like that, but I can't name all these other ones about that with famous actors. Young Christopher Lee, young whatever, you know, all these actors, Donald Sutherland when he was young and everything.
Yeah.
And everything. And all these, and he's talking about all these thrilling movies and these great ideas and young Gene Hackman's, you know, movies. I know middle-aged Gene Hackman from the 80s and then older Gene Hackman from the 90s and on.
You know, for Gene Hackman, this comedian that I'm quite taken with right now, Dusty Slay, I'm wearing his hat right now. He did a podcast with his wife, and they talked about Gene Hackman for like 10 minutes. Like the greatness of Gene Hackman and everything. So it's funny you referenced that.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. To me, he's an older man. But in these movies, he was still young. He was still young and fresh and doing action movies and stuff like that. So they're recognizable actors, what I'm saying, not forgettable B movies here. There was no summer the blockbuster started with Jaws, actually, according to movie lore. But, you know, they were big movies in their time. It's just that they got forgotten over time. And I was thinking, wow, that's what's going to happen eventually to all these 80s movies. Already kids today, you know, I mean, it's been 20 years before it, you know, it took me a gasp. I remember thinking, wait, you've never seen Star Wars? I remember the first time I started hearing that.
Yeah.
That some kid told me they'd never seen Star Wars. That was foreign to me. How could you not watch Star Wars? Now, how
would you not just run into it because it was
everywhere,
it was
everywhere. Even the prequels back then, but then people weren't watching. Are you going to watch the new episode 2? I don't know. I never watched the originals. Wait, what?
Yeah.
But of course, they're already 20 years old at this point. Not everyone's seen them.
Yeah.
And there's other things like that that just kind of die off. Harry Potter, as much as they want to keep it alive, is not the choice of the next generation. It's the choice of one generation that's about 10 years younger than us.
Yeah.
And they're riding that train out unless the young generation picks it back up, then it's going to go the way. I mean, you think about it, some of these things are still plodding along. Yes, I agree with all the critics. Star Wars is dead. They try everything to kill it. Bruce told me a few weeks ago with the Acolyte, he said, you know what? I want to give Star Wars a try. Star Wars doesn't want me, is what he said.
No, and I think that was what I'm saying. Is it a point of where they consciously know we're not going to cater to that audience anymore? It's like a demo. Like,
okay, yeah, but,
like advertisers wanting 18 to 35.
I get that. And the thing is, who are the ones with kids? We're the parents now.
Correct.
You got to go after the kids. But and people forgot about this, you're influenced a lot of times. Kids are influenced by what their parents watch and what their parents drive them to. Yeah. So there still is a factor. We're still a factor. Yes, you always want what's new and hip and what's changing. The problem is, it always is that you never can tell. Starting with, and maybe even before, but I just know Gen X, no one understood how to process us, the grunge movement and stuff like that. And, wacky, weird products came out at that time that got hot and then burned out. The same thing happens. The same thing happens to millennials, now to Gen Z and stuff. The same thing happens. They like one thing's hot one minute and it's gone the next. Social media has stayed relevant longer than I thought it would, meaning it used to be, here's how social media started. It started with everyone having their own blog. You post on someone's blog. Then it quickly switched to MySpace.
Right.
And MySpace was the thing. Then it went to Facebook. And I promised everyone in 5 years Facebook would not be around. Obviously, Facebook stayed. Same thing with Twitter. Even though it's X, it's still around. Still big, relevant. So a lot of these apps have come and gone. The hotness of whatever game, app, whatever it was, came and went. I can't remember. There was a trivia game that would give you money the longer you got things right. I remember at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone was taking their breaks at Chase and watching the same video and trying to guess. And you could buy in for $5, to keep getting, see if you could get the right answer or whatnot. It was a trivia show, and it was like a huge thing. And there's a billion copycats that came out right after it. And then the thing went bankrupt. I mean, just no one cared anymore. It was there and it was gone. It was just a flash in the pan. So it's hard to tell when things are here to stay, Pinterest is still a thing. Maybe as big, maybe not as big as it used to be.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess instead of just talking about what's come and gone, it's not about that. I'm talking more about.
I'm just saying, marketing to that demographic is hard because their tastes are ever changing,
and they'll age out quick.
Where we have one taste, you already know where it is, and you can solidify it. Yes, we aren't the next generation. You need the next generation to buy your product.
Is there something that you feel like has done the best job at maximizing that?
I mean, if you're looking at legacy stuff, I don't really care for them, but Coca-Cola has done a good job by keeping their legacy. They're leaps and bounds in the soda market away from everyone. Dr. Pepper just got number 2, away from Pepsi, who is not really...
I enjoyed your rant about the Bang drink when you talked about how screwed up that was.
That's so screwed up. Of course, I'm not a fan. I mean, they just sued him into the ground because Bang got, number 2 or something? No, number 3. They were number 3 behind Monster, and Red Bull's number 1 by far. Like, Coke wishes they could sue Red Bull.
I mean, isn't that just to me, that's like an HBO documentary that no one wants to...
No one wants to do, but yeah, they sued.
It's a hell of a story.
Anyone who moves up, and Bang moved up to number 3 and was catching up on Monster, and then they kept suing the heck out of them because they knew they had unlimited funds, bankrupted them, bought them in bankruptcy.
Doesn't that go against the idea of the American dream of creating and stuff? It's like if you do that... Not only will someone gobble you up and possibly buy you out, if you don't sell, they'll just kill you and then pick the bone.
And the thing is, it's also the president's fault a little bit because as he was picking a fight and going to war against Coke, he had an agreement with Pepsi as the distributor. They didn't own it, but they distributed it.
Yeah.
And instead of asking Pepsi for backup, he sued Pepsi too, thinking he could win everything. And, of course, bankrupt his own company. And so now they're
like an antitrust lawsuit. Is that what it was?
No, something about the distribution. He didn't think they were distributing his drinks fairly enough, or whatnot. Something about the placement, the agreements, the distribution was slack. I don't know what it was, but Pepsi says that is ridiculous. And I don't know where he was getting his info, but obviously he was wrong. So Pepsi, he lost that lawsuit. He lost Coke's lawsuit and ran out of money with lawsuits.
So Coca-Cola, you feel like, is the legacy brand that's done the best job?
I mean, because they've kept their clientele. I mean, here down south, if you drink Pepsi, you may as well burn crosses in your front yard too. It's not looked
That's
at.
a hot take on Pepsi right there.
I'm just saying, this is Coke County is Southern stuff, You're a Southern boy if you drink a Coke or whatnot. But that kind of
Well,
image
that's
is,
because we say, what kind of Coke do you want?
but that kind of image is everywhere. It's in the Army. Just Santa Claus always drinks Coca-Cola. He's not drinking a Pepsi. He's
Right.
the Coke Santa logo. I mean, shoot, Santa's been sponsored by Coca-Cola for 50 years, and no one's touching that. You see Santa drinking a Pepsi, that's a fake image. That's fake news. AI generated stuff. But I'm just saying, I just think they've done well to keep their formula the same, keep their customers happy on one end, while at the same way still being relevant. But I think they're being relevant through, if your family keeps buying Coke and that's what you're used to drinking, guess what? You're going to drink Cokes.
Yeah.
If you're used to drinking, like when we grew up in Mississippi, we drank Pib, which is Coke's version of Dr. Pepper.
Right.
To this day, I love Pib better than Dr. Pepper. Is it? I don't know. It's all subject. Taste is subjected. But the thing is, though, I'm so used to Pib. When I taste the Dr. Pepper, it's like, this is a cheap version of Pib.
Do you feel like calling Dr. Pepper barbecue water is a fair take?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, just
But that's
wondering.
funny. Do you think it tastes like barbecue?
Well, I've just heard that before, and then
I don't
after
think it
I
tastes-
heard it and I tasted it, I drink like diet
maybe.
Dr. Pepper,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I can see it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll drink a Dr. Pepper. I'm not against it. But if there's something else in the fridge, I'll get it. I usually drink Pepsi over Coke just because I don't like Coke's flavor as much, and RC is my favorite.
So your take from tonight's is that Coca-Cola has maintained.
I think so. They've been very dominant in the industry, and they're still relevant to both kids and adults, I think. But I also think it's because kids are used to that. And food is easier because it becomes a comfort, to have your sweet Coca-Cola, and you always love that taste. We grew up eating Great Value ravioli, and to this day, I think I would rather have that than Chef Boyardee. When I went to college, I bought some Chef Boyardee because I was like, I'm going to eat the good stuff now. I hate Chef Boyardee. I went back to getting Sam's Choice or whatever it's called because that's the one I was raised off of. Johnny's Pizza. You don't, there's and you and everyone else here. There's a place here, folks, called Johnny's Pizza all around Louisiana, and people in Louisiana, if they ever move away, they don't eat pizza anywhere else. You were the same way. You don't.
Yeah.
When you were in Memphis, you'd come in and you'd text everyone, I will be at Johnny's Pizza from 11 to 2 or whatever.
Right.
And you were every day because I came and saw you a couple of times
Yeah,
as did everyone else.
So I guess that the thing that the biggest question I have is we've kind of went all over the place. I guess
We
the
have.
thing, is it up to us as a consumer instead of complaining? Because it seems like that doesn't seem to be an avenue for anyone caring anymore. Do you seek out like just creating, like you said, with an EU universe of things? Basically, our EU universe is trying to hold on to the past in some way.
Nostalgia is a thing not just for old people, but as you're younger. If I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, we always thought back to our days when we were in grade school. When we're past college, we think about our good old college days and high school days.
Yeah, everything has
When we
has a 10-year run.
Yeah. And we had talked about this when your dog
Yeah.
had passed away,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the end of one chapter for you
Right.
and everything. So everyone tries to hold on to relics from the past and everything. I mean, I have some collections. I have some of the older.
I'm
board-
holding on to myself as a relic of the
There,
past.
there you go. I like to go to antique stores just to see stuff that I played with as a kid. Now it's called antique, But you mellow out a little bit more. You don't like change as much. We kind of like things the way they are. We stop caring so much what other people think. It used to be what everyone else thought about you was very important. Now, screw you. I don't care what you think.
Well, I don't know about that. I think that there's
to an extent.
I think
would
that
say I'm
social
like
media has made that even
well, social
worse
media. Well, that's the
situation.
thing. It's easy for me to say that because I'm not on social media.
Yeah,
You're right. You're
good
right.
Lord. Yeah, I think you
But-
were talking about the Gen X and I think if there's something that came out of that has overtaken things, and I'm not saying it hasn't gotten better, because obviously the awareness is like mental health and stuff is a huge thing that
Oh, it is a
people
huge
that
thing,
I
yeah.
think is very, very much a product of early 90s.
And social media, the only thing that it's brought us, not to be super negative, is everlasting immaturity. You have people who are more immature because the adults are exchanging words with youth, and it just kind of drags you down to their level in a way where just things become petty, and you get in little bickering disputes. You have to pick sides on different things. Oh, so and so unfriended so and so. You know what that means, you
Yeah.
know, and whatnot. And a lot of things that people say online they wouldn't have the guts to say in front of their face. But you know, it's a lot of animosity and anonymous. What's it called? You're mainly anonymous if you're under a gamer tag or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's someone saying, "Oh, Matt, look at all this something this person's saying." Yeah, and they're saying it under a gamer tag.
Yeah.
Ooh, they are super. They never show their face.
Yeah, I
they
just-
only do videos of trash talking other people. It's just cowardly.
So before we wrap up, I have a funny
Yeah.
story.
Go right ahead, please.
Okay, so this is based off my girlfriend that I have, who is a little bit younger than me. She walked in. I was watching Sports Center, and these I'm watching are very grainy. They look like a third generation VHS. So it's a lot of tracking issues, but that adds to the memory of it to a certain degree.
Of course.
Or either you're watching on a crappy TV. So I'm like, well, hey, what do you think about this? Because this is like my new thing that I'm into. And she looked at me and she said, I feel like I'm watching TV with my stepdad and I can't get the remote. So as far as
was
aging
that bad,
out of
huh?
something, that brought a lot of clarity to things that I enjoy. Some things people just are not going to get, and you have to accept that.
But to be fair, it wasn't a part of her childhood.
Right.
So if for an example, maybe she watched the show, and I don't know if there's a show like this, one of those family channel shows called Black Beauty about the horse or whatever, and it was the TV version, and she wanted to watch every episode, and she asked me, "What do you think about this?" Be like, "I think it's an old show and it's stupid and dumb,"
Right.
because it's not part of our Sports Center wasn't part of her past,
Right.
So I can understand that.
But I just thought that was not only did she not get it, it was geared to a situation that was like a bad memory, where it's like she couldn't get what she had to sit there and watch it with her old stepdad. So anyway,
It doesn't matter.
I thought it was a funny joke.
I'm glad you sent me the links to that because it did send me down the rabbit hole for a short time where I was watching some things. I told my brother about it.
Yeah.
And just some things I just forgotten how good they were. I knew they were always good. If you say, "Oh yeah, they were good," no man, they were just like it almost felt like it was the same. It couldn't have been scripted because it was just so smooth. The way they passed the ball back, they had their notes right there.
Yeah, it was very back and forth.
There was no prompter they were reading from.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. It was a different time, and it was some true talent that I'm not saying you don't see today. It's just that you rarely see in a lifetime. I really think they were that good. So, folks, if you were ever into sports back in the day, check out those old Sports Centers. And that's the cool thing. I will say that's the cool thing about YouTube and the internet today. Is because you can I look at a bunch of old commercials too.
Yeah.
I looked up recently because I just remember I said, hey, because I got my girl some Oreos, and I said, who's that girl with the Oreo cookie? But the story was, who's that kid with the Oreo cookie? And I just
Right.
started humming in
The
my
jingle.
head. And then I brought up the jingle on YouTube and played it for the girls. Like, Dad, play it again. They thought it was great.
Yeah.
But it just automatically, when I said that word, I was like, oh, wait, I remember that. So look, then it started me sending down the rabbit hole for old commercials.
Yeah.
Those things we would change the channels on now, we love to see again.
Yeah.
Like I told you a long time ago, reading old comic books, the thing that I enjoyed just as much, if not more than the comic books, was the ads. I would stop and look at those old ads.
Yeah.
Do I want a whole packet of sea monkeys for 15 cents? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Did you ever buy the packet of sea monkeys?
I was not much of a sea monkey guy. I guess I could smell the BS even through
The whoopee. You mean the X-ray glasses weren't real?
No.
Dang, and it's funny because the kid's always staring at a woman. So
How about that?
That was in every kid's. You know, it was acceptable.
Some things don't change.
Anyway, folks, tell us about what you think about that. I don't even know what we're going to title this topic. I just think it was a good topic, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
This is Wes's idea. All right, so tell us what you thought about it, and we'll see you next time on Princes of the Universe.